Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to Wake Up, Look Up, a podcast where we connect events happening in real time to the gospel of Jesus Christ. I'm Zach Weihrauch. And in today's episode, we're asking the question, who cares for caregivers? Here, primarily, we're thinking about the elderly, those who require care for themselves or for their spouses as they get up there in age. It's prompted by a heartbreaking article I read in the Wall Street Journal this week about a couple, Richard and Ellen Hoyle. Richard was 89, Ellen 85. And I say was because they had been living together, been married for decades, living together as they both got older and less healthy until the final point where Richard killed his wife and then killed himself. In the note he left behind, he cited not just the discomfort and pain of getting older, but the crushing weight of caring for himself and for his wife. It's a terrible, terrible story, but it's actually, unfortunately, becoming more and more common than you would think. Murder-suicides are up among those 65 and older. Believe it or not, 10% of murder-suicides in the United States involve the elderly. And of those older than 80 years old, murder-suicide is up 300% in the last few years, meaning people in this demographic are 3 times more likely to kill themselves and their spouse than ever before. And consistently, what we're hearing is that the combination of being less healthy and having to care for themselves and for each other is just a weight that is too crushing for them to bear. Listen, as Christians, when we read stories like this, we have to be careful not to just push away and say, oh, that's horrific, that's terrible. Click on a different story, turn the page, think about something different. Because one of the things the Bible makes clear is that compassion should be a dominant emotion for us as Christians. The Bible regularly calls us to care for others, particularly those who cannot care for themselves. That's because it reflects the heart of God, who we're told time and time again in the Bible is for the vulnerable, is caring for those who are often forgotten and marginalized in our society. And in all the conversations over the last decade or so about marginalized people, one group that often gets left out are the elderly, those who tend to be forgotten, those who cannot care for themselves. And if you find yourself in that situation, if you are at present someone who's getting older and finding it harder to care for yourself or people in your family, or maybe you have aging parents and caring for them is a crushing weight for you, I want you to know that God cares about that. That even as you are a caregiver, God desires to be the one who cares for you. In Hebrews 4, we're told that Jesus is a high priest who can sympathize with our weaknesses. And surely Jesus understands what it is to carry the crushing weight of caring for other people, of needing to be the one who meets other people's needs. When I read passages in the gospel where Jesus will show up into a town and spend all day healing, and think about the emotional and physical toll that had to take, that fatigue is the fatigue you feel. So when you go to Jesus, you're going to someone who understands not just theoretically, but experientially how you feel. It's also true that as a church, we have to be a place that is caring for people in this life stage. Galatians 6 tells us to bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. When one person in our church is carrying the weight of caring for a family member, particularly who's aging and unhealthy, we have to see that as our weight, not their weight, whether that is coming alongside them in the care they're providing, or whether that is like they do Moses in the Old Testament, holding their arms up as they provide that care, encouraging them, giving them the emotional and spiritual support they needed. This is what Jesus meant, by the way, when he said, all you who are tired and heavy laden, come to me and I will give you rest. Jesus helps us carry our burdens, the burden of our sin, but also the burdens of our lives. We have to begin to realize that some of the most at-risk people in our communities are the elderly and those who provide them care. I just wonder if Richard and Ellen had had a local church around them, if they had had Christians who were paying attention, who saw their burdens as their own, if not only they would have been loved and cared for, I wonder if they would still be alive. Well, that's a question we all should sit with today and ask God to put on our hearts. How can our families, how can our resources be leveraged to care for the caregivers? Hey, thanks so much for watching this episode of Wake Up, Look Up. While you're here, take a minute to like and subscribe. It really helps us get the word out. Don't hesitate to leave a review wherever you might find this podcast on an audio level and help spread the word. And hey, while you're here, check out all the other content we have at Christ Community Chapel on YouTube. Some of those videos are popping up on the screen now. Click on one.